how infusion of technology helps in this we are doing in Andhra and now Telangana. Earlier they were all in Andhra, now just looking into both the states we covered in this. Then we have some programs which are club under technology for society. One thing we're trying to do is look at disaster-prone zones and see how technology can help in improving the lives there. Preliminary discussions are going on with Pinot districts, Himachal Pradesh, and flood-affected regions of North Bihar. We also developed a portal for assistive age and appliances. In this case, what we have done is that we have a project with Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disability. We have 4 segments of this. One is work that is done in India, is not yet commercialized. Second, technology that is available in India commercially. Third is technology that is available globally, but not complete here. And then through our organic scanning process, what technology is likely to come. It was launched on December 3 by Wikipedia. It is called, the site name is Info. As I mentioned, Bharavi cluster actually is also under our technology for society in some sense, because we felt that one of the main issues was health and hygiene issues. So we organized a discussion on that. We brought them to Institute of Chemical Technology. We also did technology gap study, but as I was talking about the plastic recycling to digital filament, then the company in Pune which has been doing this, we would like to take the Dharavi team to Pune or bring the Pune people just in about 10-15 days time and see the possibilities. And yes, something like this happens, so that the value addition happens, then life of workers, their health, everything can improve. Because right now the value addition is very little. And I went through in fact, my whole team, at first time when they went, it was very difficult to get into that area. It took 1 or 2 days to gain confidence. After that, now we are accepted as part of them, and we keep getting phone calls. But you can see that we are discussing here this Plastic Recycling Association, and we went through each of these, the way they work at different stages. It's very interesting. In fact, it can be a whole set of lectures on that only. In the capacity building program, one of the things that we started was to bring the students into TIFAC. So we started a student internship program, and this is allowing our scientists to work on things which they are not able to spend direct time. So more than 25 students have been working on this. This continues on a wide variety of topics. One more point in interested linkage is to be up to date with what is happening around the world. We have started to enhance our linkage. We are already linked with EASA, but we started to participate in an organization called Global Foresight Organization Network, GFN. First time we participated in 2013, and then next was in Seoul, in Korea, so we participated in that. And this year, TIFAC plans to hold this, and we are also trying to develop a portal so that all the countries together can collaborate. Because we realize that all of us were doing the same thing separately. So what we plan to do is to use this portal as a way to collaborate, and that TIFAC is doing this. In addition, we are also planning to have connections with other organizations. We also plan to host an international conference on disaster management. What we have noticed, because of all these international visitors to TIFAC and TIFAC visit abroad, has also increased significantly. So TIFAC, which is the organization which is looking at 20 years and so on, it is very important for us to connect with young people, and one of the best ways to do social media. Now more than 1,000 people have been following us. We started about a year back, and it's quite popular actually. We have been tweeting the same things, and we see that a lot of people are following us, and the information that is being shared is very useful because latest information, very interesting information. One of the things that we have done, the session that we're doing on brain, partly out of the soil scanning process, because we see a lot of activity happening in this field. We felt that we need to organize something on that. We also started a newsletter. One of the newsletters, the latest one, which is on Guardam, the green one is in your folders. Now I come to the next part of the event, which is we're going to release few reports. One of them is on Tirupur ready-made garment cluster, which actually has a huge export that happens. I think it's around 20,000 crores. So we have gone into details of that. One of the points that was missing there was that they do not design themselves. In addition, we have identified many other things. I don't want to go into details, but the outcome was that a design studio has been now agreed upon by the Ministry of Textiles based on this report. So what will happen is that, and we also carried out certain capacity exercise in trying to give them training in fashion design, fashion technology design. And to You surprise from the fashion technology design, actually, you have to do fashion forecast. And there are 12 seasons a year, not 3 or 4 seasons, but 12 seasons. It changes so fast. So you have to be able to foresee what's likely to change and do it fast. The design has to be done and going to market. So it's a very short time. So we have done a couple of training sessions on this, and the design studio will help in this process. We also done a report on plastic clusters. This is along with RIPET and AIPMA. These are all the Delhi clusters. So this is again another report we are going to release. There are a few recommendations of this. Again, I'm not going to details. And I'm personally interested in seeing that how 3D printers can be used here also. So, but that part would not be added into this. This was done earlier. The third one is auto components cluster in Jamshedpur. Now, auto industry in India is quite good. In component sector, you can see that global market is 7 lakh crores. Out of that, Indian sales is quite high, 2.2 lakh crores. And out of that, exports are around 0.72 lakh crores. However, what has been found is that this study has been done in NIT Jamshedpur. What was found is clusters around Tata Nagar are stagnating, partly because Tata is moving their many of the activities away from Jamshedpur. So we need to diversify. This is one of the things, and we are trying to see that some of the new initiatives the government has taken, for example, Make in India program and so on, how that auto component cluster can take advantage of that and change the product portfolio to synchronize with that. The Guardian thing I already talked about, this is the fourth one. The fifth one is an activity that was done under India ESF program with partnership with the Institute of Forest Management. We have Dr. Madhu Verma here from there. And this study has looked at modeling, and it's actually looking at livelihood issues based on the modeling that is being done. So this is the fifth one that we are going to release. So now I request that to bring the 5 reports and we do the release and stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for all the reports being released by this meeting. I also would like to call on stage Mr. Sanjay Singh ji, Mr. Swat sir, and Dr. Madhu Verma. Please come up on stage, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to invite on the dais Dr. Anil Kapoor, Chairman, TIFAC, for TIFAC Day address on Technology Vision 2035. Dr. Kapoor, former director of BART and ex-chairman of AEC, played a key role in nuclear testing. Thank you so much, sir. Secretary DST, Professor Ashutosh Sharma, Executive Director TIFAC, Professor Prabhat, Registrar, distinguished experts, stakeholders of TIFAC, several people who have been helping with TIFAC in carrying out its programs. Technology, when the country is just kind of developing, when you get technology from somewhere, as the manufacturing capacity and gain the economy. But when you go up that ladder, you are actually in competition with other countries doing the same thing. And so if you have to create a niche area for yourself, then you should be able to evolve your own robust and competitive technology. Because in a globalized economy, if you get technology from somewhere and practice that, you can at best be number one. You can never be number one if you are pursuing your economic activity on the basis of technology acquired from others, because they can also market their products. Now the era has moved further, and we are talking about people benefiting the economy through innovation. And this actually is in my view, much bigger challenge for us. It's a bigger challenge for us because I think it not only requires a particular kind of training, but it also, I think, in my view, requires a significant cultural transformation in our ways of working, particularly the ways of working together, way of working in groups, and so on. And so, we need to create, innovation is not something which by giving a lecture like you and I or going to an institute and giving a lecture on innovation, you will be able to do it. It is like grooming of children. You can give sermons, but unless and until children are actually put to that practice, day in and day out, year after year, then you will develop those habits, and that's stand in good state for your life. I think innovation is something of that kind. Of course, innovation is about ideas, and ideas, I think we are second to none as far as creating ideas. When we saw, you ask people to talk about ideas, great ideas, tremendous ideas. In fact, into our technology vision, and it's in the process. But innovation is not just about ideas. Innovation is about ability to translate the good ones, the better ones,
the more viable ones, the more important ones, ability to translate them into successful business ventures. That's where you really influence the economy. And that's where we lack. Many times they say, India is a land of ideas, but the United States is a land of opportunity. And so a lot of innovation takes place in the United States because of ideas of it is in this context that I think the role of TIFAC is very important. You just heard from Professor Prabhat several activities which TIFAC is engaged in. As you would have felt, TIFAC has actually gone through recalibration of itself to align itself closer to its mandate. And I'm quite happy that I think that approach is producing results, and some of it you saw. The technology vision exercise is one tool to sort of it's essentially showing the mirror as to what are the areas which may be important, what are the areas which may influence our life, what are the areas where as a country we need to prepare, and so on and so forth. Now, vision is never static. We had this wonderful exercise, Technology Vision 2020, and it did create a very different environment in the world. But then, 2 decades down the line, things change. The socio-economic conditions of the country change, and the technology landscape all over the world changes. The aspirations of people change, and so on and so forth. And so, it was felt that rather than waiting for 2020 to arrive and then engaging ourselves into a different exercise, we should look at technology vision exercise as a rolling plan and recalibrate that vision. So, I think we should record in TIFAC documentation somewhere. But just as we have done this exercise 2025, well before 2020, which was the crucial date for the last technology vision exercise. The next similar exercise should happen well before 2025. And that allows us to relook at ourselves, reset our priorities, and so on and so forth. And of course, the objective of TIFAC, as the name indicates, is to provide information to carry out technology foresight exercises and to provide an assessment to policymakers and decision makers. And I think our work should speak for itself, and so we should be able to develop a very credible relationship with all our stakeholders, more particularly the policymakers. Now, Technology Vision 2035 is actually a people's document. It has been done by several people following different committees or not. But more important than that, it has gone through a very broad-based consultative process where inputs have been accessed, acquired from a very diverse set of people. It includes technology contracts, it includes scientists, it includes young people, it includes old people, it includes business people, it includes the common person in the street, it also includes laborers. And the inputs are been sought through meetings like this in the halls at different places in the country. Inputs have been sought through internet, through portals, and through several other means. And then we had groups of very eminent people looking at, we divided this whole thing into different sectors. And so we had one group looking at each sector, and they prepare or they got themselves to start preparing what are known as the sectoral documents. And as this work advanced sufficiently, we commissioned another set of people to actually take stock, take a look at the sectoral documents, but not be conditioned by what's written there. The idea was not to create a summary of sectoral documents, but create a standalone document. And so this group prepared this copy level document, which I'll just run through. It's not possible to do any justice to this document in 20 minutes. This is half the time already. But the intention is to give a flavor about what this document is about. And so you'll get an idea about. And we want to use this document in a variety of ways that will come as I run through several of these slides. But I'm actually going to run through all these slides in a very rapid fire manner to give you that flavor. Now, the first step, of course, is to look at the 2020 vision document and see what was expected and where we are. And it's obvious that in some areas things would actually overtake what was expected, what has happened. In some areas, probably it will be aligned, it will go in tune with what was expected. In some areas, there will be slower progress, and in some other areas, there will be even slower process. And it's important to, the actual progress of technology happens through a variety of pathways. It's not necessarily science driving technology. It could be even society driving technology. Whatever happens elsewhere drives technology in a variety of pathways. And so it's interesting to look at this retrospection. For example, who would have imagined that in IT sector we will make so much of progress, in communication we will make so much of progress. There are other areas, for example, space, atomic energy, missiles, where India today is counted among the top few countries. That number you can count on your fingertips. So that progress has taken place. The reasons for each one are different. It's interesting to learn. There are other sectors which have moved rather rapidly, as was expected. For example, the aviation sector and so on. And it's not my intention to go through all of them. some of you who are at the back, you will not be able to read even. But the short point is that it's important to be able to understand the dynamics of how technology deployment or technology assimilation in the society moves. Now, the document per se is covered in several chapters and they are listed here. Again, I'm not going to read that out. But the important point to recognize is this document is, as I said earlier, people-centric. Our constitution says we the Indians. This document also says that we visualize ourselves to be like this in the year 2035. And these are likely to be our needs in that time as compared to today. And so it's important that when we're talking about India, it's not one single monolith. What is certain is that India will remain a large country, India will remain a diverse country. And so we are talking about being able to cater to diverse needs. And so it's important that we have a rough idea about how people will be distributed among this diverse type of Indians. And we divided this into 6 categories. Even if I'm not able to read the description of those categories, but the figures will tell you what we are talking about. And we visualize what percentage that would constitute, of course, in a non-exclusive manner, in the sense, if sum them up, it will go well beyond 100. But it gives you a fair idea about what kind of Indians we are talking about, and what are their needs, and how they are distributed. For example, if you talk in terms of the 3 very basic and very fundamental needs, all of us are familiar with Maslow pyramid, and so the question of security, prosperity, identity needs. All of us, we have some degree of these kinds of needs, but they vary. It's not as if one group will have 0 need, another group will have need. But and the size of those circles for the 3 kinds of needs actually tells you how these needs are likely to vary. So now in that background, what should be our vision? We thought a lot about this, and finally have come with a vision statement that technology, the service of India, will be enhancing prosperity and strengthening the identity of every Indian. We must cater to every Indian, recognizing that their needs are likely to be different. Having recognized needs, the next question is, what is it that an Indian should expect? We will give them some prerogatives. And the group has identified 12 prerogatives, 6 of them at individual level and 6 of them at collective level. Now, mind you, to fulfill these prerogatives, to fulfill these kind of expectations, you need technology. But then, because we're talking about different people, the actual description of this prerogative would be different. For somebody living in a village, the safe water requirement has to be differently defined than somebody living in a city. And so the technology that the individual will require to realize those prerogatives would be different. And the question is, how are we going to identify these technologies and deploy these technologies? And that has been identified in the document. And of course, this is not a very big document. We didn't want to make it a very big document. In the sectoral reports, there are detailed coverages. So here we just put descriptions of generic technologies and divided them into 4 categories. The technologies which may be ready for deployment, but not ever deployed, and so people are deprived of realizing their prerogative. There could be technologies which may be ready in the lab, but needs to be translated in the field. There may be some other technologies where conceptually they are known, people feel that this can be done. But it requires targeted research so that you actually get implementable technology. And the last one is, of course, the author class. Right? You can imagine, and I think we have allowed enough room for this, particularly for the young people, that they can visualize and not get conditioned by whether such technology can be realized or not. And it's actually useful to, what shall I say, I would say daydreaming, but something close to that, so that we all are driven to realize these technologies. Now, having got these technologies identified them, we need also, there are, to work within a framework of our capabilities and the constraints that are there around us. And it's not as if we treat all technologies alike, because that cannot be possible. I think it's also not advisable. So we recognize that certain technologies have already attained global leadership. And so we need to leverage that, encash that, and make the big difference to our country. There may be other technologies where gaining independence on those technologies is very important. And essentially to make sure that our country does not get into any kinds of vulnerability. Cyber security, many of the issues will come in that category. Self-sufficiency, food may come in that category. So, but we need to get our own independence. Then there are other set of technologies where, given a right environment, I think those innovations could be well within our reach. And so, how should we create that environment and how should we nurture that innovation moving forward? There may be other technologies where it's perhaps, of course, if you are innovative, innovating is always good. But depending on some technology developed somewhere, just adopting it here is not bad, provided we are sure that it was not likely to get into any vulnerability. And so we have at this point. There may be yet another set of technologies where by design we may decide to defend. Simply because the size of market that technology is likely to cater may be extremely small, and there may not be, let's say, no strategic communication involved, no vulnerability likely to set in. And so it doesn't make sense to invest in manufacturing capacity where the demand is not viable and there is no strategic consideration. And so we could, in fact, the policy decide to depend on some technologies developed elsewhere. And by doing all this, we need to be very clear about the constraints, because technologies are moving very fast. And quite apart from adoption of those technologies, there are actually several societal and ethical issues which are likely to arise, which in fact we are seeing them, that they have arisen. And so the question is, how as a society we address ourselves in terms of, number one, policy decision taking going forward, educating our people in terms of the use of that technology, and so on and so forth. Now, you have this cocktail of technologies, you have a kind of a well-considered logic of what we should do about it. But there are a few things which are kind of prospective, which you have to do regardless of a particular user need that you're talking about. For example, material. They're important for a whole range of domains. Manufacturing, again, very important for a whole range of domains. Communication technology, and of course, the creating infrastructure, either for manufacturing or for skill development or for research. And similarly, fundamental research. Many times we have, I do fundamental research, I think to do applied work, and vice versa. And when you go to industry, it becomes even worse. But do you have floor experience or you are bookish? Now, I think that language has to vanish. If you're really talking about translating ideas, products, we need to link fundamental research to applied research, to technology, to products, and for that matter, to large-scale deployment of that products. But then certain trends are visible. They are listed here. Not necessarily a complete list. So the shape of technology products tomorrow is likely to be quite different than the shape of technology products we are used to today. And in fact, the brain-computer interface related discussion that is to take place today will give you a very good example, a very good glimpse of that phenomenon. Then, of course, to connect this document with the sectoral roadmaps, which are big documents by themselves, there is a pull-out at the end of this document where there is one page. This is actually a copy of the page. So there are 12 such pages where in each sector there is a vision statement, issues, what are the emerging trends and concepts, what are the future technologies, and some sectors. And they're all listed there. This is not the time to really run through them because obviously there are 12 of them and each one there are more than 12 numbers. So no question of reading 150 numbers, but they're all there in the document. So I'll skip on that. And then we have identified the grand challenges. And the logic is grand challenge is the thing where the whole nation rises. Man on the moon was a grand challenge. There are people who criticize whether that expenditure is worth it. But both on account of the national pride and more importantly on account of the spin-offs that working on this grand challenge created, it actually gives a nation a big reach. So we said, okay, we should also identify some grand challenges. We have 10 of them. Again, I'm not going to read them, but they're typically like taking rail to on one side Tawang and other side Leh. Both are very difficult terrains, but I think it has strategic significance. But more important than that, it will do in much bigger way what Open Railway has done today, or the Railway Kashmir, Government Kashmir has done today, or for that matter, the British era, whatever the train in the Kandala Ghats has done. If you imagine the point of time when these were implemented, these were huge challenges. And I think we know how important those have been for the economy of the country. On the other hand, there are items like guaranteeing nutritional security and eliminating female and child anemia. When we're just saying, what are we talking about? This is a grand challenge, but it so happens that if you want to, once you address this challenge, there are several things get taken care of, including our young children being able to rise to the full potential and not be handicapped on any account arising out of nutritional or other deficiencies. Same thing is true in the context of mother. So like that there are a number of challenges. And then finally, the last one is a discussion on technology and society. I'll just read that out. The next generation of technological intervention into human lives due to the influence of, we have these new things, NBIC, nanotechnology, biotechnology, IT, and cognitive science, will throw up new and perhaps intractable ethical dilemmas. This is where we need judicious policy and conscious planning. Technology is a wonderful instrument in perfecting democracy and empowering the people. And of course, if you don't do that, that's the other edge of the double-edged sword. Then we listed the call to action. Different actors have to do different things: the government, the industry, the academia, the institution. Some with respect to policy, some with respect to actual pursuit of program, some with respect to creation of an innovation ecosystem. We identified several key activities. Context of innovation, creation of knowledge, ecosystem design for innovation and development, and deployment of technology. And then several articulations of the path that forward. Each one of them is important, but we are giving them rather brief. We are not long treatise on this because I think treatise does not work. The message goes across, let people interpret it in their own way.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable speech. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to invite much awaited talk by Professor Ashutosh Sharma, Secretary, Department of Science and Technology. Before joining BSc as Secretary in January 2015, Professor Sharma was an Institute Chair Professor and the Head of Chemical Engineering, IIT Kanpur. He was educated in IIT Kanpur and Pennsylvania State University while he obtained a doctorate from the State University of New York. Professor Sharma is the recipient of numerous honors and awards, including the inaugural Infosys Prize in Engineering and Computer Science, Nagar Prize, and many more. His other interests are in ancient history and philosophy, including Upanishadic thoughts, poetry, and art. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Professor Sharma.
Thank you. Dr. Kakodkar, Chairman, TIFAC, Dr. Prabhat, ED, TIFAC, Prabhat, Registrar, TIFAC, distinguished panelists who are going to speak and brainstorm today, and also distinguished audience, friends. I am very delighted to see 28th Foundation Day of TIFAC. Because it clearly proves that the people who set up TIFAC had foresight. And this is the great mission of TIFAC. It's very unique for the country. It's a very unique institution. Okay, we don't really have too many that are in the business of technology prediction. Now we know that technology prediction, to kind of repeat a cliche, is very hard. Prediction is very hard, especially if it's about the future. And so we know that they're in a tough business and they are doing a great job of this tough business. As you see, many fantastic reports that they have put together. Now, of course, Dr. Ranjan, he told us about all the stuff that TIFAC has done since its inception. And Dr. Kakodkar talked about the structures and mechanisms and vision going all the way to 2035. So you can imagine I don't have very much else to add now, and so I would be rather quick. And I was thinking about, what I should talk about, right? So maybe some thoughts about the process of foresight itself. Now, you see, foresight is not only about the future, it's also about the past. It's greatly about learning from the past. People who do not know their past will not make their future. That for sure, we repeat the same mistakes and so on. So the past is a very integrated part of future. So foresight must take that into account. We must have good historians of technology and see what are the different paths that different societies have traveled in order to arrive at technology readiness. And what does it mean for the future? Also, technology forecast cannot be done in isolation between different sectors. And it can go horribly wrong. So the forecast, the foresight, is not about age, it's not about wisdom, it's not about just knowing having sector knowledge or domain knowledge. It's much more than all of that put together. To give you two quick examples, we know all about this great company Kodak, right? It was the master of all photography. So when I was a kid growing up, that's what, you took photos and you associated the name Kodak with it. Over the decades, in the 80s until the 80s, it even pioneered the digital photography. It had all the patents, it had the greatest portfolio of patents in digital photography. But somehow along the way, its leadership opined that digital photography is not the future. He said, who is going to, the people need to look at the printed photos. If we don't have that, then there is no business. Take another example of IBM. They said there is no business in personal computing, PC, and they said there is no future in it, right? And these were the people who have been in the sectors for all their life. They were the top leadership of these companies, right? So where did we go wrong in this? Well, we did not correlate the sectors. That's what I think. Because, you see, a personal computer has no meaning unless you got gadgets and software to go with it. Personally, people would like to do something with their personal computers, right? And those platforms like digital photography were not available. Digital photography, on the other hand, needs a platform of personal computing. So if you're thinking in isolation, you would never actually be able to predict what is going to take, right? And so this is very, very important aspect of foresight. And also, technology foresight is not diverged from foresight about socio-economic political systems, right? And there are many, many examples of what technology is going to play. Greatly depends, of course, it depends on what society we are looking at. We have to look at its, the holistic system as a whole to see what technology is appropriate, what is going to survive, and what is going to die, right? So the role of about the foresight, especially about technology foresight, I just have quick 4 keywords. So it must be dynamic. You see that hugely successful Vision 2020 was actually thought of in around 95, 96, last century, last millennium, right? And then now after that, this is the second exercise going all the way to 2025. However, the future is not going to be what we think it is. It changes every year, really. And many aspects of that future are shaped as we talk. So therefore, it has to be a dynamic future. And then, of course, TIFAC is right on top of that. So they say, well, that of course they're going to put up Vision 2025, but they're also going to update it year by year. And so that's a very, very welcome way of doing foresight, being in foresight business. Collaboration is very important. We cannot do it in isolation. There are many think tanks, there are many foresight institutes all around the globe. so one small or medium-sized foresight organization should not really own up everything, right? We really have to link up with other people, learn from their wisdom, and see how they actually leverage it. And TIFAC is already doing that, a great job of that. For example, linking up with ISA and many other organizations. And there's certainly more need to do that. A foresight institute like TIFAC must be defining. We cannot do everything. There are infinite number of things out there, right? It must define what is important for our society, for our nation, in terms of even priorities and so on, and let us focus our energies on what we think is important now, instead of doing everything under the sun, right? So this is defining, who we are. And then linking. Now the linking has to do with the fact that with all the wisdom that we have and all the foresight and the prediction about technology and its future, we must get that foresight to people who can use it, right? This is actually extremely important, but often overlooked in the Indian context, especially, right? So we have a whole lot of information and many wise people and many wise reports. They must get to where they will be utilized. And so special efforts have been made to link up with different socio-economic ministries, infrastructure ministries, whatever, right? Different think tanks, and say, look, let us work together and see that this thing actually comes through. Of course, one has to have a special eye for disruptive inventions, technologies, innovations. And again, I'm very happy that TIFAC pays special attention to those needs. 3D printing was being talked about, and I know that while the 3D printing can make inexpensive houses very quickly and so on. And so these kind of inventions, what PC did for personal computing, maybe 3D printing will do for personal manufacturing, right? And so on. And so those kind of disruptive technologies have to be really be watched very closely. And TIFAC is doing that, which is really great. We know that most of the jobs are created in a small and medium sector. So therefore, looking out to the development of that sector in India is really vital for Make in India objectives. And again, TIFAC is paying special attention to that. You see, so I want to conclude. Actually, there's not very much more to talk about. I just want to say, you see, knowledge systems are like a pyramid. So it's like this. The base is a whole lot of data and information, and in the internet age, it's very easy to get lost in that. I mean, there are tons, armloads of data out there, infinite data out there, information overload, right? Now we have to sift very methodically from this information overload to arrive at what little higher level of hierarchy which allows for the control and management of that information. Then we go to knowledge. From information to knowledge, we distill some operating principles, right? That's the knowledge. And then from knowledge, even some of us can get to wisdom, which is a little bit higher, right? And I will not even talk about enlightenment here, right? Which is maybe a point on top of this pyramid. But leaving that out, you see that wisdom is actually needed sometimes right in the beginning, that insight is needed, even before you start distilling the data, right? Because sometimes you start with a lot of data and then try to distill knowledge out of it, right? But even what data we are going to look at, how we are going to distill this information, that requires wisdom to begin with, right? So it's not really a pyramid, sometimes an inverted pyramid, sometimes interactive processes, and so on, and all that has to be factored in right in the beginning. So, anyway, like I said, not very much more to talk about, except that this discussion, the panel discussion that we follow, is about brain and machine. A very fascinating topic indeed. To my mind, brain is actually a machine. And of course, what we mean by brain and machine is bringing in some stuff that we put together to enhance the functioning, the capabilities of the biological brain, right? But there is maybe much more beyond brain and machine. There is the mind. There is a perception, right? The riddle of perception, the mystery of perception is never solved, and is unlikely to be solved by science or the tools of science and brain, because perception is a very complicated affair. Because we have machines with greater memory than brain, but they have no perception. They certainly have no self-consciousness and consciousness and so on, right? So these are some of the stuff that goes a little bit beyond the usual mechanics of brain, but it is very fascinating to talk about and so on. Let me just leave with good thoughts and wish you all the best in the discussions that follow. And I wish all the very best in the continued success of TIFAC. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your thought-provoking speech. And with this, we have completed our inaugural session. And I would like to request our teacher and our registrars to honor our dignitaries on the stage with memento.
So what we have here is a 3D printed brain. So it combines 3D technology with brain discussion.
Round of applause, please.
Customize it. Customize it.
So you see, the brains are not all good.
Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for our panel discussion on future of brain, a race between mind and machine. And to moderate this exclusive discussion, I would like to invite Dr. Prabhat Ranjan, our Executive Director, TIFAC, and all the dignitaries he will announce. Sir.
So may I request the panelists to come on the stage. There is no particular order. So Dr. Gauri Devi, Dr. Neeraj Jain, Dr. Narayan Srinivasan, and K.J. Damullah. Please come on the stage.
Now, I would like to request our Executive Director, Dr. Prabhakaran, to felicitate with okay our dignitaries on the stage.
Let me start by a brief introduction of the panelists. I'm going to be very brief because we want to focus more on the discussion part. So, to my right is Dr. Govind Devi. He was Vice Chancellor of the month. I met her about 2.5 years back when I was giving a talk on my work in brain computer interface. And it was the first time I was taking zoology, but I was surprised that she was a very good maid at that time. So I was very excited that people at least give some details about her to me. So thank you for joining us. So then we have Professor Neeraj Jain on my left, Professor does some brain research center Manasa. He's the only person I've not met before this system, but others I could be because he lives far off to me. Then we have Professor Dharan Srinivasan on my right. I had a chance to visit his center at University of Allahabad. Director of Behavioral Cognitive Science. I gave a talk about 2.5 years back. And then on my left, we have Venerable Yeshi Dorothy Dandu Babi, as Allah for respect, Director of Human House New Delhi. We just met a few days back. I'm thankful to him for accepting our invitation on the email. I thought I'd go and meet and explain to him. But I thought he accepted. I insisted in meeting him. And it was a wonderful session. And then he has agreed to come to TIFAC many times. And we hope that his first visit to this organization, this kind of function, will help us to carry forward. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start the session by presentation, which is based on some of my own work, but more of what is the scanning process through which last work is the kind of activity we are doing. Suppose the information is very recent. Some as said yesterday or day for yesterday, and some 2 months old. And I'm going to move very fast again because there's a lot of material there. But Dr. Govind is telling that they don't go fast, there's not to be interesting. So we'll try to manage. If you feel that there's something to be covered in more detail, we can stop and slow down. Let me go and start that. So the title we had given was a race between mind and machine, because we are seeing a lot of things happening, and we thought we will explore that. So this particular time is very significant from brain understanding of brain. A lot of things are happening. One of the things, of course, was there was a Nobel Prize given for brain GPS discovery, and it was just 2 months back. But more than that, it's actually the brain research, which was confined to labs and in hospitals, has come out of that, and partly because it has become easy to probe brain through very cheap neuro headsets. So I will talk about that first. Then I will talk about many mega projects being launched across the world. Then I will discuss what are the different ways brain is being modified or trying to be modified. Then we are trying to put brain on computer. At the same time, we are learning from brain and developing computers. Then I'll just throw some points about machine consciousness, because he was talking about it. Now, I listed out a few questions to ponder, and then I will end it by my take on the whole thing. So as I said, that probing mind is spread out labs and hospitals. So what you would typically see in labs is something like this. But what you see now in the last 2 3 years is that things like this, things like this, things like this. I mean, it's a fashionable single electrode headset that can be connected to a mobile phone, and you could monitor various things. So you could monitor a child. For example, I have myself doing monitoring children in school and so on, or using something like this to help somebody in hospital in home. There are things like this artistic EEG helmet, which relaxes you. 3D printed, again, 3D printing here. The helmet in response to the brain waves, it changes the pattern, it changes the shape. There are hackathons being held which discuss how they actually allow participants to hack the brain. For example, one of the hackathons that was there in this team, lucid dreaming one, which actually made people dream in the lucid phase. And so they did some techniques, they used the REM phase, and they made sure that you go to that. That was the winning team. So what I'm trying to say is that it is no longer experts who are doing this, but people outside that, large number of people are coming forward, just like computers and moved out from labs and so on, started to explode. Same kind of thing is happening here. I got involved in this area mainly to help persons with severe disability. So I'm not a non-expert by any classification. I was only trying to help people. And in that process, I tried to learn a few things. So the first thing that I did was to use brain-computer interface to help this gentleman, Suresh, who was from Ahmedabad, and for 13 years, he had a brainstem stroke in 1999, with the age of 32. He lost his voice, he lost his head, hand movement, leg movement. Only way he could communicate a blink of his eye. So in about 2012, March again this device, headset, and wrote certain programs so that we could capture. You can see the video here. He was only able to. You can see this video where what we have done, we are capturing his head movement. We're mapping that to the mouse movement, so that we're able to move the cursor, and we put an on-screen keyboard. He's able to focus on visual character. He wants to do that. And then when he blinks his eyes, you can see that he will blink his eyes. When he blinks his eyes, that blink is monitored through the EEG waves, and that will map the mouse plate. So effectively, it's like using a mouse, using a head to move the mouse, blinks his eyes, he types that character. The first thing he tried to type was his wife's name, Jasri, sort of there. You can see how they have to communicate. This is how they have to communicate before this. And he used to love to write blogs because he can hear and see. But we didn't have a way to do this. It was very slow process. After 1 month, we improved the system. And then we also demonstrated how we could actually light a bulb, for example, or operate a TV, for example. So you'll see this video will come to that. So you can see that he's trying to light a bulb at eye blink. So there's a bulb here, he lights it up, and you will see the smile on his face. So that's the kind of change that can bring in life of people. When I gave talk at Dr. Goyal's session, after that many doctors contacted me. And they requested me that can you make some people communicate in vegetative state. Again, I'm not going to go details, some of these are from Delhi only. What we try to do this is to see if we can capture certain brain patterns in response to certain questions we are asking. And through using that, you can get them to say yes and no. Right now, we're not been successful in this, but then I'm not putting too much effort also on this. About 3 people are trying. But I believe that should be possible to, if we put in more effort, it should be possible to get them to communicate yes and no. Basically, look at 3-dimensional brain activity in real time, and we ask them to imagine certain activity and look at the response. Now, coming on to other things, there are things happening like neural bypass. We're bypassing the link between brain and in this case arm. You're able to move arm by bypassing that link and doing this. Except in the video here, you can be able to move the fingers. The person with 2 mind control prosthetic arms. There is spinal cord implant is stretchable, so actually you can eventually be able to replace the spinal cord if it gets injured. And like in the paralyzed track, they've been able to actually make them walk. With the thought in wheelchair, the monkey is trying it out. Then Santa, for example, is trying to develop a system by which using brainwaves you can capture chance of stroke, early warning for stroke, and then give the warning to the user. Then the wireless brain interface is actually streaming your brainwave, and you can actually connect to anything else. As I mentioned, there are many nations are launching mega projects with brain. For example, the European Human Brain Project, the Obama Brain Initiative, Australia, China, Japan, and Israel. India has few activities, but we may need to probably go up on higher scale. Most of them are trying to unravel the history of brain, and human brain has got 80 to 100 billion neurons. They're trying to go down to neuron level resolution. So European Human Brain Project is also trying to do that. They've come out with a kind of, just like your Google Earth, they've come out with a map of brain, three-dimensional map of brain. Recently, we saw also news just a few days back that we are able to capture the moving animals' neural activity, not to strain. Let me come to the modifying mind part. One of the major acceptance by especially the modern science was neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity allows us to, once you accept this, it tells you that it is possible to change the brain. In our Indian philosophy, Eastern philosophy, we have always held this. But earlier, in the modern science, it was felt that brain is a physiologically static organ. Although we have always practiced meditation and so on, and it has been felt that it changes your mind to some extent. So this acceptance of neuroplasticity has changed a lot of things. I again was helping children with learning disability. And one of the things that I tried to learn through a scientific work was that if I can measure beta 1 to beta ratio, then, and if it's lower, then child may have learning disability. So to improve this, I learned the technique of brain entrainment or neurofeedback. In addition, when I did this, I found that I could also help adults with various issues like insomnia, depression, and so on. In this particular cases, I have used audio stimulus of binaural beats. But a very interesting discovery recently I saw. Some of you might remember your school days when you were punished for doing something, performing poorly or something like this. You're asked to do sit-ups by holding your ears. I was surprised. Now it is being called super brain yoga. Super brain yoga. And people are paying money to attend a session on this. And then I understood that what we call as punishment was not really punishment. It was a way to improve your brain. So the weaker students were asked to improve their brain by doing this exercise. So now you see that you go to the US and you see that a lot of people doing this, holding their ears doing sit-ups. And so in some sense we have this traditional knowledge, and somewhere we forgot that why we're doing it, and we thought it was insult. So today, if you hold someone's ears, because of it, but actually it was a way to improve your brain. It's a very interesting thing. And actually a lot of people who want to increase the memory engineers, and in fact explain that can make you a better thinker, the children with autism, learning disability, Down syndrome, and so on, they are experimenting with this. Alzheimer's patients, senior citizens, trying to hold on to their memory, they are also trying to. So look at this simple exercise. You will ask now to 3 to 5 years of that sit-up, holding your ears like this on the opposite side, and at a particular lobe you do this. And of course, this will further develop and experimented, and So I just wanted to show that a lot of traditional knowledge, what we thought was bullshit, was actually had from. Other thing that is I wanted to mention that wanting a mind has become easy now. There's a lot of traditional knowledge that we have. If we can monitor those and actually use modern scientific tools to understand the traditional knowledge, it can become much more acceptable knowledge. And many of these led to improvement of mind. So today with the kind of tools that we have, it's very easy to do that. And if we can actually monitor the way as activity is being done live, then you can get very authentic information. Normally, we do it before and after, but actually now we can do it as we are doing that. And Buddhist tradition is very strong in some of this. And as I was talking to Geshe, actually what we told is that many studies are going on, but it's very important to actually carry out on large scale such exercise so that can serve humanity in a much larger way. So one thing that I've been trying to do, that you might find a Sirodhana, Panchkam that is done in Ayurveda. I'm trying to see that the claim is that it improves the pineal gland, accurate pineal gland. I'm trying to see that while this is being done, can I monitor the mind and see whether there are changes taking place. So I could do it before and after, but that's not as conclusive as doing it live that's going on, and then you can see changes happening. Then it's actually perfect. So we're trying to do this to make sure that the process remains authentic and the instrument keeps functioning as well. Another study I saw which said that wandering mind is not a happy mind. This is something that has been thought for a long time. I came across a book which says the Be Here Now, and they actually all talked about this, and a lot of practice that we have now it's been realized that this is what Harvard research has shown. The other way that modifying brain is being, or mind is being tried, the brain in this case supplements. For example, we have used Brahmi for a long time. Nobody objects to this. But now you're cognizant enhancing drugs. These drugs kind of improve your alertness, your focus concentration for a short time. And some of the universities, I've seen a UK university survey, 25% of students use it. And slowly, just like a sports, a lot of people started drugs. Now this is happening in this case. Now, what should we do? Is it okay to accept it, or do we need to do something more on it? And the costs are not very high. So actually, it's available to anybody who wants it. You can buy it online. Other interesting news that came across, the scientists from MIT said that if the way things continue, by 2025, half the US children will go. And she claims that it's linked to a particular weed killer. And the reason that she says that it is considered according to the company, I'll not take the company name, but it's considered by a company that's safe for human beings. But actually, the research shows that it's not safe for the gut bacteria. It actually kills the gut bacteria, beneficial bacteria. So while it's supposed to be beneficial to human being, it kills gut bacteria and thus leading to a rise in autism. And actually, you can see the graph that she shows. The graph shows that the way that use of that particular chemical is grown up, autism has gone up very significantly. I think it was 1 in 5,000 to 168 or something like that. So it's a huge growth. So we need to completely, in light of such things, we need to look at our food safety in a very different way. India still has time, but if you don't do it, we'll be following US. Other technique that I wanted to mention was that I learned a naturopathic technique to remove gallbladder stones without filtering. Sorry?
Autism means the child doesn't interact in a social way. Suppose you start talking, doesn't make eye-to-eye contact, shies away, keeps quiet, likes to be alone, may not be able to take part in activities with the peers, the children, play games. So, you know that people were not recognized it, the parents or the doctors, but now we find many people are alert to it. And in some of the children, there are genetic abnormalities, others may be due to some toxins. Autism is little isolation, learning disability, social interaction is very less of that. And a very shy, actually. Sorry?
In your opinion, what is the role of parents?
Yes. Yeah, the parents have to recognize this very early, which is not easy. Then there are child psychologists, child psychiatrists, who tell them how to take care and give attention to such children. It's a big program by itself. And some medication also can be tried, but generally counseling and how the parents handle the child. That's important.
Thank you. So I was sharing an experience. I learned a naturopathic technique to remove gallbladder stone. The lady was present here, but I will not point out. She suffered severe mental disorder for 50 years. And she was in touch with me, trying to help. I was helping her with brainwave entrainment. But when I learned this technique of naturopathy to clean my liver and gallbladder and so on, I also requested everybody else. I've been sharing this information with everybody else. And she also went through the exercise. And I didn't expect anything, but she miraculously improved, and she had memory and everything came back. She was not able to exam, she started to give exam. So in addition to my happiness that she improved, but I had personally really no hope. But I realized that the inner hygiene that we're following of cleaning up gallbladder, liver, kidney, colon. That is linked to the brain, and we need to worry about what I'm calling inner hygiene now as part of our education system. The food habits, the lifestyle, all of these are very important part of this. I've been trying to work on this. Another way the brain is being modified is for genetics. Actually, with genetic modification, we make the cells in the brain to be receptive to light. And then by putting on and off light, you can actually control the parts of the brain. You can actually implant experience in the brain and so on. So this is where actually one is able to modify brain in the rat is already inside. Some of you might recognize this picture, which can PK, the movie, where America actually transfers in 6 hours, holding hand, whole language, he learned Bhojpuri. He comes to a planet where there is no speech communication, it's all brain-to-brain communication. And he's able to hold the hand for 6 hours, and the whole Bhojpuri knowledge is transferred to his thing. So Bollywood is not behind, they are also looking for size. But there are other ways that people are thinking. For example, Dr. Nicholas Negroponte, the MIT Media Lab, the director, one of the futurists, he said that one day we could learn language population. So basically information field, where all the fields that we talked about, that in our general capability, here we are putting information in the brain. And actually, there are also significant work being done of downloading lessons into brain. So maybe 20-30 years down the line, we don't have to lecture, we just correct something to brain and the knowledge is transferred. So there are scientific work being done along that line as well. Then other work that is being done is trying to bring brain to computer. So Ray Kurzweil was a futurist, well-known futurist. He said that in $1,000 you can get computing power equivalent to Mars, which already happened. Human, it will be in about another 10 years, we will be able to achieve that. That means in $1,000 you get brain power equivalent to human being. And by 2050, he is saying that it will be so much power to combine all the human beings on the earth and to be equal to your $1,000. You look at the brain of various species, starting with roundworm, this is the minimum 302 neurons, that's 7,500 synapses. You go to human beings, roughly 100 billion, and synapses 100 billion. This is the kind of range. One experiment, and they actually put the mind of the one roundworm into a local robot of only about 300 neurons. They start to behave like the roundworms. And you can see the video actually. So the worm has about 300 neurons and 1,000 cells. Human brain, of course, is very far off. But one may think that what do we have in common with worms? Actually, 80% of the genes are chemical. So it's not that they are completely different. It's only game. So it's a most basic version of a complex life. So the machine sensors, without any prior programming, made the robot behave in a similar fashion to the worm, a protein backing up from spectrum or similar to that too. So in this, the beginning of digital immortality. Digital immortality defined when you're able to download your brains into a computer or a robot, and even your physical body is there, your brain or the mind remains alive. It's called digital immortality. So just like this world, are we going to be like this one day? Other thing that through the traditional computing, using supercomputers, human brain simulators. For example, one of the experiments that was done 1.5 years back, 1 second of brain. This was, of course, not full brain. It was roughly 1-2% of neurons. So it's saying that 1.73 billion neurons and connected by 10.4 trillion synapses, roughly 10% of synapses. This was simulated using 83,000 processors. To simulate that 1 second, it took 40 minutes. It used 1 petabyte of memory equivalent to about the 250,000 PCs. But the power it used was humongous, 9 megawatt power. Our brain, which is more powerful than this, uses only 21. So it looks like that if you continue doing this, that will not be possible. If you look at the next news, brain inspired. IBM, just a few months back, released the second generation of neurodynamic software chip. It has 1 million programmable neurons, one chip, 256 million program synapses. can do for 6 billion for what? 5.4 million transistors at biological real time is only consuming 70 milliwatts. So it's compared to that humongous supercomputer taking 9 megawatt, this is taking only 70 milliwatt. So the size of postage stamp is expected that could transform science and technology because, for example, one single way they are very good is vision. They're able to recognize people, images, and so on from various angles, various places. That is not possible right now with computers. It is likely that this kind of technology can make changes. In fact, the gentleman, Dr. Dharman Moda, who is heading this, is from India, and probably one of the IITs that we can do. So you can see that the progress for the first generation to second generation is 3 years from 2011 to 2014. You can see the kind of jump we had. In 3 years, it's 10.3 orders of magnitude improvement. So if one cannot extrapolate in this, but suppose you're jumping every year 10 times, human brain is not very far off. So IBM targets that they want to go to 10 billion euros and 100 trillion, so roughly 10% of human brain they're trying targeting this. So the issue now is that if we are able to put all the hardware together, so machines can become concerned. I have come across two sets of believers. One believes that yes, it is possible. We should be able to upload our mind, our thoughts, memories, our personality to it. And once we've done that, of course, we can copy it, edit it, modify it, sell it, whatever. Of course, somebody can fix it, but something can go wrong with it. So some believe that consciousness is part of the natural world. It depends on the mathematics, the logic, and what I say imperfectly known laws of physics. But we don't know all the laws, but it follows the natural law. But the others who believe that it arises from some magical or otherworldly quality, which is not possible, humans do not have the capacity to bring consciousness into machine. So these are the two set of believers, and one way one discussion is very important discussion that one can have. Edison data has projects where memory, additional memory, just like our pen drive, or that's being already developed. So you can actually, if you have less memory, like I have less memory, I can add a little more to my and I have additional expanded memory. So right now, for example, our mobile phones have become our extended body part. Similarly, you might have additional memory that you can buy from us. Very important for scientists like us, the robot scientists, who is doing drug discovery better than human scientists. We discussed the malaria drug, and so are we going to be replaced as well? So this is already happening. Robot scientists is doing this. So this leads us to the question that could artificial intelligence and human race. For example, this was a robot Titan. You can see it's walking in supermarket and all people taking pictures. In fact, Elon Musk, a very famous entrepreneur, I don't know to describe him, there are so many wonderful things. He said that I'll give $10 million to look at this, that can even robots take over, just do research to make sure that it doesn't happen. But Professor Stephen Hawking himself is saying that there is a danger. So it can bring in the human race. Of course, Stephen Hawking is one of the very well-known thought leaders. So some of the questions that I would like to pose to the panelists and to the audience, can computer overtake us? Can we become digitally immortal? Can consciousness be imparted to computers? One of the issues is, can cognition enhanced drugs be controlled? I mentioned about safety norms for food. What is increasing leaps and bounds in US? Because probably our food safety norms are not proper. Do we need to start discussing that in India? Would modifying brain technology lead to large scale misuse? Because we have been brainwashed in various ways. If that brainwashing process becomes very simple, we don't know what's going to happen. But it's also possible that using this technology, we can improve our capacity of our brain much more than what we have been doing so far. My own stage is just like mobile phones, the internet has become extension to us. I expect brains to also get connected to larger resources, which could be other brains or other computing resources in the next 20 to 30 years. This would give us capacity unthinkable now. For example, I could borrow the brain of Einstein for 3 minutes and do kind of thought process that was not possible. I remember when I was doing a PhD, we had access to supercomputer. Every day I had to get 3 minutes of CPU time in 24 hours. That was only I could do. So similarly, I could borrow somebody's thing, maybe at a cost or whatever. But again, if we want to misuse, then we need to get what is like any other personal development. So we need to think about this thing. So I will stop at this point, and then I will open the session to the panelists. I will invite Dr. Govind the first. So I thought he would look at the smoking Govind thing. So I thought that we will get him to give the final.
Thank you, Professor Prabhakaran, to call me a simple neurologist, a doctor who looks after patients who need lot of these computer-assisted devices. Now we are talking about brain-computer interface. A few concepts of brain which need to be understood by scientists like you all is that what we thought when we were undergraduate students doing MBBS, it looked at as if all the neurons which were formed at birth almost remained the same. There was no change. And the brain was a static organization. That's what we thought. But soon one realized that there are many changes which occur, and the word, we use the word of neuronal plasticity. What do we mean by that? That means new connections can be formed. Changing programming can be changed. I'll just give you an example. In the brain, our body is represented in an inverted way called the homunculus. Like the hand area will be somewhere here, the speech, and the leg will be there. Now that's well represented. And then there are experiments to show that if you were to strap one or two fingers, something and not make it work, the part of the brain which is controlling this limb, these two fingers, will become smaller in size because it's not being stimulated. The other example, the opposite example is, if you go on giving an electrical current with the same index finger, the area of the index finger increases. Okay? So what we thought was stationary pictures now is a dynamic change. Depends upon the use or misuse. I think all of you have read in the newspapers, use the brain or lose it. So what we are talking about is stimulation. These are the fundamental concepts of brain function. Stimulation versus dormancy. Now, in this, I'm just a few of the issues which you have mentioned. So, neuronal plasticity has to be understood in its fullest form, because whatever devices you people make, there has to be an ever-changing thing. It cannot be a static connection. Now, I saw the example which Professor Prabhakaran showed us in our Delhi neurology meeting, and it was very fascinating that a person who could not communicate for 15 years could make some signals. Now, as a neurologist, we see a large number of diseases. Just to name a few, like a stroke, suddenly occurs, paralysis of one side of the body, and if the left half of the brain is involved, then the speech is gone. The person understands, one part of the call it Broca's area, understands what is spoken, and but cannot reply because the word formation is like that. The another way of speech impairment is a little part, posterior part of the brain. Whatever you ask a person, they don't understand. Now this is a great disability. How does that person communicate? The person who has what we call expressive aphasia. Aphasia means loss of speech. Expressive is you cannot communicate. Other one is called receptive. So if you are trying to help, these patients are numerous in this country, following strokes, following head injuries. India has the largest number of road traffic accidents. Please do not forget that. They have brain injuries, limb injuries, all parts of the body are injured. How are we going to rehabilitate? So the concept of neurorehabilitation has to come from your side. I'm just trying to give some examples. People are aware of that. Then Stephen Hawking, you mentioned, Stephen Hawking has got a disease called motor neuron disease or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. That is my area of specialty. Last 40 years I've been working on these patients. It's a very sad disease to have. It affects the speech, the swallowing, the movements of the hands, the leg, and finally the breathing. The person usually dies between 3 to 5 years. They can't eat, they can't swallow, they can't breathe. So we give all artificial methods of sustenance. Now Stephen Hawking could be kept alive because of your technologies. He cannot breathe on his own, so there is something which helps him, ventilation. He cannot speak, so that he does through communication through other, some little cheek muscle which activates. That's how, because he's a top scientist, all the great technologists that can help him. But there are so many people in this country. I've done a population-based study, 4 per 100,000 may have ALS, and I see them almost every day. How do we tackle these patients? How does the family get help for these? Parkinson's disease, people fall down, get injured, so. I mean, there are numerous examples. If I go on and give a lecture on clinical neurology and diseases, you talked about mental retardation, how children cannot cope up with their education, with their games, the play, and so on. There are numerous ways of helping people. I'm sure somebody is going to ask about stem cells. Every patient of mine asks, can we not put stem cells in Parkinson's disease or ALS? Well, these are experimental studies being done in animals, but so far it has not come to the clinic. Now, the brain is a very complex thing. We are not just talking about memory. We are talking about past experiences. Just imagine if my brain is transferred into Jawad Ranjan. He carries all my childhood memories, not his. So how does he function? So while you can do heart transplant, liver transplant, kidney transplant, brain transplant is possibly a question. But what can be done is tissue can be replaced. So brain is not just memory, cognition, consciousness, but it is an emotional concept which is built up from your very childhood. So be very careful when you computer scientists come in and try to help. There are a lot of safeguards which have to be built. Many of the things which you said sounded like scientific fiction, but I'm sure they will reach the reality one day. I think I won't talk more than this. If any questions, any specific, I can address them. Leave the platform to the others.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Professor Neeraj and to give his comments.
Good evening. I'm a neuroscientist. I'm a biologist. The way I see the brain is that it's essentially made up of neurons, the cells, like Professor Ranjan mentioned. They are all connected to each other. They work together. And what do? They, in the brain, we get all the information about the world around us with our senses. There's some computation going on in the brain. Memories are formed, thoughts are there, learning is there, and there's this entity called consciousness, which comes higher than cognition. And finally, there is an output. Output is usually some kind of movement related. That's really what the brain is all about. Until recently, we didn't know what's going on. We had an input and we had an output. Now we have this new imaging technology that has shown that we can actually peer inside the brain and predict what you are thinking. We can predict what you are going to do. We can actually capture your dreams. We can do all kind of stuff. So we are at a stage now we can start to build a model of the brain. Now this is where the problem comes. We understand how neurons function, how do they transmit information. We know little bit information about how what kind of a network they form. They form a very complex network, just like an internet, but many, many times more complex. We don't understand it fully. but we have no idea, absolutely no idea how that emergent property is emerging from the structure. We need some deep insight which can happen perhaps 5 years from now or maybe 50 years from now, I have no idea, which will give us a theory of the brain function, which you can call theory of mind, something like Einstein idea of relativity, which means information. And then we will probably try to understand how does the brain function, how does the brain put all the information together, compute something, and decide. So this is what is lacking as a neuroscientist. What my goal is to actually understand how does the brain do all this. This is from a biologist point of view. I personally do not believe mind is something beyond biology, beyond brain. That's my personal belief. I may be wrong, I may be right. I don't know. I think mind is just some total of all the activity of the brain. Now we come to how do we challenge it with the machines, or how do the machine challenge brain? Now, if most of you will remember something called a Turing test, which is more than half a century old. The idea that was put forward was that there's a machine behind a curtain, and you give an input in a very simple way, and machine produces an output, and the observer cannot distinguish whether the output was given by a human being or by a machine. That means we have created a machine which is intelligent. Now that's partly true, that's not partly true, because essentially we have created a robotic device which can do a lot of things that a human brain can do, but can it think of itself? Does it have consciousness? Does it know who am I? Does it know if there is some other human being that has a brain too, right? That's a being. So that's something that is missing from the Turing test, and that is something unique about the brain, and that is something we have to worry about in the future. If machines or computers or robots actually are able to become like that, and that's the caution that I think is being projected in various scientific forums, that we have to be worried about. So you are essentially creating a new species at that stage. Can we do that? I think we can do that. The reason we have not been able to do that is we still don't have a definition of consciousness. The definition of consciousness, once it emerges, we will be able to tell that we have created it. Okay. As far as enhancement of brain is concerned, that has been happening right from the beginning. When we train a soldier, we are training. When we train a student, we learn a language, we are programming our brains. I see personally absolutely no problem with if the brain is enhanced by some other technique, some other technology. This is all technology. It might be old technology, but it is all technology. So there is no issue if we could download a book into the brain in the future. That's fine. I mean, why not? It's just a faster learning. I don't want to learn for 10 years in the school if I can do it in 5 days. I can learn a lot more during my lifetime. Can we enhance human body by the brain, by the machine? Professor Ranjan showed some brain computer interface devices. I am myself interested in that. I am surprised that we have never met before. Common interest like this. This is something that's happening, and there's something that's going to happen. The only hindrance to that, to take it to the next level, is what I stated first. We do not still understand how does the brain hold information. The day we understand that, we will have brain-controlled machines that will be able to do anything that we can think of. He talked about some questions he posed. Can the brain become part of the network? And that reminds me of the species whose name I forgot, that Captain Picard on Space Enterprise used to be, where all beings of that species were interconnected with each other. So we are already interconnected with each other through internet, right? So there's just one step ahead of that. I'll just address and then I'll close so that the time is running late. Madam talked about brain transplant. I think we should not think of it as a brain transplant. I personally like to think of it as a body transplant. The being is the brain, like an eye transplant, arm transplant, hand transplant. We are essentially talking about we are preserving the brain and we are changing the body. And if you look at it that way, things become a little bit simpler for everybody, right? Face transplant has a big problem in the beginning, in the changing identity of the person. So all you are doing is replacing the body. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Because of Narayan, it wasn't giving research.
So let me kind of follow Neeraj. Couple of things I want to add that we should not forget when we talk about the mind, that the brain is in a body. We are an organism, and this organism is interacting with the environment. So as the mind or the brain has to adapt to the environment for survival, it is going to adapt to different kinds of environments differently. So one way to understand this is that to understand brain function, you will need to understand the environment as well, not just the brain only. Of course, people realize that. So you need to understand the environment, the context in which the organism is located. That could involve physical ecological environment, as Gibson and many others have pointed out, but also would include things like culture in the context of humans. So we will need to understand the surrounding context as well to understand how the brain functions. The second point I would like to make is that I have problems thinking of brain or the mind as you give some input and it produces some output. I have a problem with it because it's essentially a feed-forward behaviorist model. So it may be easier to conceptualize it in terms of more like a feedback control system, which I think there are a lot of engineers here. So you can think of then as the fact that we have goals. All organisms have goals at different levels, and we perform various actions to achieve these goals. So you cannot understand action without understanding what the kind of goals that we have. And when you have these goals, before you perform an action, and this idea is becoming more and more popular now, the organism is going to predict the consequences of the action. And presumably, you perceive and you can compute an error. People call it predictive error. So there are these notion of predictive brain or predictive mind, depending on which terminology you want to use. So that might be more useful to think that, but to understand that we do need to understand the goals of the organism. Because without understanding the goals, you cannot simply look for in isolation or actions or movement in isolation. I think that's one of the problems we have. We tend to look at these things in isolation, and partly that's creating the problem in understanding brain function as a whole. Some random comments based on the questions that were raised by Professor Prabhat Ranjan. One, for example, I agree with Neeraj. We are always interested in changing others' brains. Right now we are sitting here and doing it all the time. As we use language and other tools that we have evolved. But as far as specific things like cognitive enhancement for drugs, just a couple of minor points to remember is that a lot of these drug dependence curves are even in cognition. It goes back to the old, if these drugs in large, if you increase arousal, performance increases, but usually the shape is inverted U. If you keep on increasing, then you don't keep getting benefits. At some point in time, you reach a peak and then things start falling down again. So please, we do need to keep in mind that we don't have a linear or even a increasing or even a exponential relationship. So a lot of them show inverted U relationships. That's one thing to keep in mind, whether we are going to take drugs or whether whatever we may do, that after some time things actually may start getting worse. That's part of nature itself. The second issue is that, and this is something that needs to be kept in mind, and we do know in certain cases, external perception, so I have probably more examples there, is that different cognitive functions, if you increase the ability in one, it doesn't mean that the others are not affected, because these things are interconnected with each other. If you increase a cognitive ability in one process, it's going to have a negative effect on some other cognitive process. There is, at least in terms of drugs, or certain simple, very specific process-related interventions. So we know, for example, that, I mean, if you think in terms of perception, you have to segregate. But if you make segregation very easy, you also need to integrate to perceive. So if you make one better, the other one is going to get affected. And you can show it easily in visual perception and masking experiments. But there are various other cases. So you also have to remember these cognitive processes are not separate, sitting separately, and you can boost one without affecting the other. Because they are all interconnected with each other, and the optimal performance of whatever the optimal function is something that we need to find. Exactly what will get us to perform optimally, not just the best in something. I think the word optimal is probably more critical. As far as other things concerned, as far as brain-computer interfaces is concerned, at least my limited understanding, I don't do it myself. I think the real challenge, as Neeraj pointed out, is that it's difficult to interpret perception, so to put it in a very simple manner. So most of the brain-machine interfaces, most of them, not all of them, focus on actions typically getting signals from the motor cortex or electrodes typically are related to various actions like eye blinks, eye movements, and so on, where it's easier to code them and understand them. It is very difficult to code what we are right now perceiving right now. And if we can do that, and that's the challenge. I was just reading, just throw it out, one science fiction, but this is actually a paper that was proposed. I don't know when it will become a reality or not. I was just reading this paper on what they call neural dust. Essentially, this is a proposal from a bunch of people in the University of Southern California, where essentially they are thinking of these neural dust as the miniature processors, 10 to 100 microns in size. You just sprinkle them in the brain, and then presumably they will convert electrical energy into ultrasonic. So they think that you can put an ultrasonic integrator within the skull, and then which can be used to communicate with these small sensors, as well as power them, because these small dusts also need power. So, and of course this is not a reality, but there is a proposal out there, and it was neat that people are making these power calculations and whether it's feasible or not. Today it's not feasible, but perhaps at some point in time it's feasible. But I would just come back and say that even if you're going to enhance or even understand, we probably need to look at more holistic techniques. I'm sure Geshe will talk about meditation. But we do know that certain practices like meditation actually affect multiple cognitive and emotional processes simultaneously. So perhaps such solutions which will enhance optimal functioning would probably be a better way to go if it's better. I wouldn't really rely on a single practice just improvement memory. Because there is an example, famous example, I don't know how many of you know, Luria, the Russian neuropsychologist, studied a particular Jewish population called Ashkenazi Jews. And they had exceptional memory as a group, and they have been relatively isolated, so they probably had genetic properties, things that are different. They had exceptional memory. They can remember a lot of things. However, it came with side effects. So lots of specific types of diseases, I don't remember the names anymore, probably she may know, were prevalent among them. So it's not that you get one benefit, you get it somewhere else. You probably know the names of the diseases. So just keep that in mind. And interestingly enough, they reported, while they can remember lots of details like phone number types details, they had huge problems with face perception. Because they thought one face is kind of merging with other faces. They cannot be able to separate it out because they are remembering everything. It's all getting mixed up. So I'll stop here. You should probably also.
Well, the Ashkenazi Jews are a very select group of people. There's a lot of inbreeding within them. So there are large number of genetic disorders within them. You see, we are also told, I'm sure there are somebody, if you try to remember too much, it's unnecessary. It's important to forget some things so that, of course, the storage capacity of the brain, we can say unlimited. But even there must be some level where you cannot. So if you're going to forget something, it's good. Particularly if you forget unpleasant experiences of your life, you're much better emotionally. You agree, sir? Thank you. As the questions come in.
Thank you, Krishna. Okay, thank you, Dr. Prabhat, and all the panelists here, and respected Secretary of TAFEC, and all the observers here. So basically, I have a few points to make. One, why do we have to explore whether or not there is a mind which is different from the brain? Rather than starting by saying that, oh, they should be the mind should be different from the brain. No. The brain is the mind. In the first place, why do we explore that? This is the question. And if there's no specific purpose, reason, then we just forget about studying about mind. Just study brain and that's it. But in actuality, if we think of, say, what Charles Darwin's position, his discovery, I would say discovery, his hypothesis. One, that human beings, we evolved, our brains evolved, and now we are gifted with the instinct of anger, attachment, and so forth. And this instinct, which we are gifted with through millions of years of evolution, that allows us to dispel or expel what is harmful to you, and the attachment or desire, which is going to be the equipment to acquire what you want. So this is how we live. This is Charles Darwin's hypothesis. In case if the world follows this hypothesis, believing that this is the reality, what is the consequence? If there is no bad consequence, well, it's fine. There's nothing wrong there. But imagine, according to this hypothesis, anger is something which we cannot eliminate because this is instinct. If this is correct, and this is what everyone believes, then people will not strive to eliminate anger. Then without striving to eliminate anger, this anger will give rise to hatred. And the hatred will give rise to terrorism. And this terrorism is the cause of the disaster now. So imagine what the President of India said. There is no good terrorism, bad terrorism. All terrorism is bad terrorism. And they decided all these examples of the recent terrorism. Just imagine all these things. So behind all these intellectual discussions, if you're not careful, then there's serious repercussions in humanity. There's a crisis which are following that. So therefore, this issue, whether or not there's a mind which is different from the brain, this is a huge and very important topic to discuss. Wow. Now the next question. Now, what's the reality? Whether or not there's a mind which is different from the brain. I read Eric Kandel's book, In Search of Memory. Eric Kandel, who is a Nobel laureate in 2004 in physiology. He put forth two hypotheses. He said, just in the opening passage of the book, according to the current neuroscientists, hypothesis one, there is no mind, it's just the brain.
hypothesis 2. There is mind, but it's the emergent property of the brain. So these are the two hypotheses which is support in the opening passage of this book. Now the next question, whether or not there is a mind which is different from the brain, or whether or not our mind or the brain, what we call as the mind or whatever, whether it be anger and the negative emotions which the Dr. M. Gorey so beautifully mentioned. The emotional world, whether these emotions such as hatred, anger, jealousy, so forth, are they something instinct or inherent, developed over the last millions of years in the human realm? These are all the questions. So that is a huge discussion, and I like to share as many points on this, but then I simply want to restrain myself with this to jump to the next point. The next point is I personally believe, and this is my take, that science is such a rigorous system. Science is such a rigorous science system. Physics, chemistry, biology, and now it's particularly neuroscience. It's such a rigorous system. And this system is its own incredible strength and beauty. We must not dilute that by mixing with other disciplines. What I'm saying here is that while neuroscience is so deep an inquiry into the human brain, it should not be mixed with physics and chemistry. It should not be mixed with spirituality. At the same time, it doesn't mean that neuroscience is the whole story of the humanity. Neuroscience is one story of humanity. Because the reality, human beings, as all the panelists mentioned, is such a complex system. It's not just a simple system. It's a very complex system. So complex that the biology is involved, chemistry, the chemical reactions involved, and the physics, the elemental particles involved. Every complexity is out here. As such, it is very important to keep in mind what is known as the three divisions of reality. Three divisions of reality. One is the evident phenomena, and the other one is the obscure phenomena, and the third one is the very obscure phenomena. Three. And all these three, we the human beings, we are constituted of all these three complexities, the complexity of the evident phenomena, the obscure phenomena, and the very obscure phenomena. So what is it constituted of the evident phenomena? Evident phenomena is those things which we can measure, which we can easily see, which we can quantify them by means of the technology. All these things, they fall under the category of the evident phenomena. So what science, the present day science is doing, tackling the first phenomena, the evident phenomena. And I would very much, this is my very strong belief that the modern science should be confined to that for the time being, with this evident phenomena. And yet, as I said earlier, that human beings, it is not just composed or constituted of this evident phenomena. It is so much complexity here. Hidden phenomena is also there. Hidden phenomena or obscure phenomena. Obscure phenomena, for example, the quantum physics, how the electrons behave. If you are to measure, quantitatively measure, as to what is the velocity of the electron, what is the position of the electron, at what period of time, it has to be considered only in relation to the observer. So the observer-observed relationship. So that plays such an important role. So this is not something that people looking through the machines, we can see things. So it must be the observers who brought in. So the physics has now coming into a paradigm shift. We see a paradigm shift in physics happening. Now the next point is that this issue of the mind, and this issue of the identity, the self-identity, identity as a self, I. So we see each one of us. If you're not interested in this talk, you'll simply leave. If you're very interested, you'll stay till the end. What determines that? That's a sense of I. This sense of I determines whether you have to stay here, whether you go, whether you have to grab the chocolate, whether you grab the alcohol, whatever. So this is I plays a very important role. At the same time, if you reduce the sense of I to this just physical, small structure, brain, that is very dangerous, very dangerous. So therefore, to make it very short, out of the three kinds of the phenomena in which everything falls into, phenomena, then the slightly obscure phenomena and the very obscure phenomena. Of the three, science as of now is dealing with the first one, mainly the first one, right? So, whereas we should not forget the second and the third one. If you forget these two, then it may take us to very serious repercussions. The next point that I like to share with you here is that then what exactly is mind? This is a question which have been in the realm of mystery for the last many millennia. What is mind? This question. Okay. So the mind, we are not supposed to think of something which is something mystical out there which we don't understand. To make it very simple, mind, simple, let's all think of India Gate. Let's all think of India Gate. India Gate is not there, but you could sense, you could imagine India Gate in your mind. And then, as our here speaking professor, Professor Neeraj, he said, now we can detect what you're thinking. Initially, how did this happen? How was it evolved to this stage of complexity where the scientists are able to detect what you're thinking? Initially, you may be thinking about India Gate, and then you are put in the fMRI scan. So there, the scientists could see the brain waves in the computer, but you cannot see the brain waves. You have first-hand experience of what you're thinking. Oh, I'm thinking of India Gate. You know the mental process, you don't see the brain process. The scientists see the brain process, the scientists don't see the mental process. And then the scientists will ask you, what are you thinking? I'm thinking India Gate. Okay, with this brain wave, it corresponds to India Gate. So this is how it started. So therefore now, you may say, oh, now you are thinking of Apple. Or now you may think of your mother, right? So this all started by initially corresponding with what you are thinking and what goes to the brain wave that you see on the screen, right? So we see that what you are experiencing, which the scientists cannot read, this is known as mind. What you are experiencing, what the scientists cannot see, is mind. What you cannot see, what the scientists will see, is the brain. This is the distinction, right? Now, in this regard, the next question arises. Now, how can we say that this, whether or not this mind is the emergent property of the brain? This is next question. Whether or not the mind is the emergent property of the brain. We should not begin by saying that, oh, the mind is not the emergent property of the brain. Mind is different. No, we should not start with this. So there must be reasons, rationalities, very convincing rationalities to feel that the mind is indeed distinct from the brain. Then we see that, oh, because the mind is so distinct from the brain, and the brain which is so limited in the physical nature, so the mind, on the other hand, it can have incredible potential to grow, right? So, as Dr. Algori said, sometimes it is good to forget things, right? So the thing is that here, if you are as here the secretary of the that the wisdom. If you develop the wisdom, then more the knowledge that you have, better you are in a position to help others, to tackle situations. Say, if you have so many things, and then these thoughts, bad memories, they give us pain in you. Then because of this, then next time somebody, because of recollection of the past, bad experience, then the person is in pain and trauma, then you can empathize with the person. Whereas if you forget it, then you have no pain, and then when the other person is going through traumatic experience, you can empathize. So here the wisdom plays an important role. Wisdom plays a very important role. Okay, so then now the brain and the mind. So I can't really go into detail as to how I have for the last 30-something years explored into whether or not the mind is different from the brain. So now one very quick summary which I'd like to make here is that the physical brain and the mind, one of the great Buddhist logicians and epistemologists and a psychologist, Acharya Dharmakirti, what he said was that the brain and the mind, these two are very closely connected. These two are mutually dependent. When you affect the brain, it can affect the mind. When you affect the mind, it can affect the brain. This is nowadays, at one point in time, say like 20, 30 years ago, there was a belief among neuroscientists that it's not a neutrality, it's a linear. Whether you affect the brain and the mind is affected, that's it. Not that the mind is affected, the brain is affected. That one is reversed from here, in 20, 30 years back in time. Now the scientists, with the research happening in America, this is what is being discovered. This is what is being taught more. It's not just the linear fashion, where you affect the brain and the mind is affected. That's for sure happening. At the same time, if you affect the mind and the brain is affected, with meditation, your brain is affected, and the new neuronal circuits and synapses, they very stable synaptic connections are being created because of this, long-term meditations and so forth. So affecting the mind can affect the physical brain. So this is what is being discovered nowadays. Then, so from that point of view, what I like to share with you is that with the brain and the mind relationship, the mind in the Buddhist psychology, there is explanation of how the mind has so many layers. But what we experience now is very gross. And then when we sleep, it becomes subtler. And then when you think, it becomes even subtler. At the time of death, it becomes even subtler. So there's so much diversity, variance in society. Now, interestingly, as the mind becomes more and more subtler, as the mind becomes more and more subtler, it becomes more and more independent of the physical brain. This is one thing that we need to know. As the mind becomes subtler and subtler, it becomes more and more independent from the brain. So there are techniques and methods by which to deliberately make your mind subtler. And then you could feel that your mind is becoming independent of the physical brain. And then about this last point, what can we download everything, all the things of the brain? Okay, and then you take one, consume one pill, compassion pill, and you can bring some passion like Dalai Lama, or you take a pill for the physics, you become the next Uncle Einstein, right? His Holiness the Dalai Lama jokingly said, I remember that in I think in the West, in America, he said that if that is possible, I will be the first person to sign up to take this, to buy this pill. This is what His Holiness jokingly said, right? So what I'm saying is that the distinction between the fields, taking the pill and then the person, very compassionate, very possible. At the same time, there's a distinction. With the pills, as long as the effect is here, the person feels compassionate and tender, soft. The moment that the pill is gone, then the person goes back to the same rudeness, coolness. Whereas this change happening through mental practice, meditation, that experience is very stable and it stays. Thank you.
Thank you for very enlightening
any comments. Now we open the floor for discussion. That's what we wanted. So please.
I want to ask Dr. M. Rohideli, if there is what is the role of family members towards, what should be the role of family members towards a person who is shy in socializing?
Shy?
Shy in socializing.
Shy in
Who
socializing.
doesn't want to interact with other people, wants to be alone, and what should be done to transform it so that it will be able to solve.
Well, one has to find out the cause of shyness. It could be just a behavior, or it could reflect a disease like a depression. So, firstly, one should consult a psychiatrist or a psychologist and find out the reasons for this isolation. One wants to be alone, not go out. If it is just a personality pattern, then it can be changed to counseling by a psychologist, and the parents are taught how to do it. But firstly, we must recognize whether it is a routine behavior pattern or it's a part of a disease, a mental disease. I think that's important.
Next question.
What you said, Mr. Dambar, is that the mind is soul. And secondly, mind drives the brain or brain drives the mind?
Thank you. Whether or not the mind is soul, this is a very serious question. I like to make it very simple, particularly in discussion like this or in the academic area. So there, I always encourage people to tackle those things which is within the bound, which is within your ability to convince others of the existence of that phenomenon. So the mind, as I said earlier, is, say, you think of eating it, you're thinking of it. So that agent with which you are aware that I'm thinking of this for is mind. And some people, they think that thing, the agent which thinks, this is mind, this is soul. Some people, they interpret it this way. So if this is the case, then I will say mind and soul is the same. Whereas others, they may not interpret it this way. Soul is something which is different from the mind. Soul is something which we cannot experience. Some philosophers, they explain it like this. If that is the case, then the mind and soul is so different, and what we are discussing here is the mind. And the next one, whether or not the mind drives, whether it is the mind which drives the brain or the brain which drives the mind. So these two are more like as I said, a mutuality of drive. There's a mutuality of dependence. At times, the brain can drive the mind. So, for example, this is a typical example given in the Buddhist psychology. Say when there's a brain damage, then the person can lose the speech. The person can, even the sense of empathy disappears at times, and you lose your language. You may not lose your speech, but then you may lose your language. This has happened. So this is how the brain drives the mind. At times, they are mind which drives the brain. So through deliberate thinking, not through physical changing of the brain, but deliberate thinking, new synaptic connections are created. Very stable new synaptic connections created. And the indication of that is twofold. One, physically you can diagnose that. Physically you can diagnose that. And then number two, you can see that at times, without any effort, you can spontaneously invoke those experiences. Those experiences, which are an indication that some kind of stable change in the brain, synaptic connection has occurred. Yeah. So it's the mutuality.
Well, the question was very good and thought-stimulating. It's both ways. As a doctor, I will tell you the example. The concept of psychoneuroimmunology, the word has evolved over the time. Our Ayurvedic physicians recognized long ago the deep interaction between the mind and the body, mind, brain, and body. But I think the modern doctors like us, we didn't recognize it for many years. Now we know that if a person is agitated and you go all the time, the same personality continues, you can check the blood pressures at different times. The blood pressure will rise. That's part of the thing. Or your bowel movements may be faster for irritable bowel syndrome. One could get headache, one could get pains. That is how the mind influences the brain through various mechanisms, and the brain affects the heart, bowel, etc. Okay, that's what. Now, the brain affecting the mind, there are numerous examples, both in the history of neurosciences and what we see. If you damage a particular area of the brain called the hippocampus, your memories of recent memory goes, but the old memory may remain. The behavior may change. The famous example of Brenda Miller, a psychologist at the Montreal Neurological Institute, she saw a patient who had a road traffic injury. He was in US and she was called from Montreal because she was a fantastic neuropsychologist. This man was an engineer. He had injury on both the sides. I think he had epilepsy and the surgery was done. He would continue to be active, could draw the diagrams, etc. But when his attention was drawn, let's say a telephone rang, he would answer that. When he came back to his drawing, everything is forgotten. The doctors who were coming to see him every day, he couldn't recognize them. He will say, who are you? But they introduce again and again. So here, a brain lesion is changing the memory, the thinking process. There are numerous examples. After head injuries, I'm sure many of your people who are around you that suffered from a severe head injury, there are a lot of behavior changes. And the thinking process is affected. Okay? So it is both ways. I mean, he has talked in a higher plane of philosophy. I am talking in a more of a daily things what we see. It is both ways.
One more.
Just one thought-provoking thing, and I'll bring it down further. I'm nowadays. So, in a way, as a biologist, I think actually, mind does not exist. It's on brain. Okay. In future, both will probably merge together. We as a human being, that includes the neuroscientist who wants to know everything about the brain. I cling to the notion of mind because that gives me something as myself bigger than what we call my Nashwar Sharir or whatever you want to call it. So I want to think of it as a bigger than this body. And that's why I cling on to this notion of mind. So that's one possibility. And today we don't have answer to that. Maybe at some point in the future we have answer to that. And that's one of the things that you're saying why we talk about mind. Because we want to know who am I. And am I better than my brain? Something like that.
I think
I would like to add here that he said that this question.
Is there a mic to give it to her? Please get it. Better audible to us.
I would like to add here that it's neither brain nor mind. It's the diet which you take. That has a very big role to play. Diet, food, the quality of the food. I have one more question with Dorji, Mr. Dorji, that how will you define meditation?
Very good.
Can I add some tips on making the mind subtle?
Meditation, in strict sense and in the loose sense. In the loose sense, it is habituating your mind on a particular object. Habituating your mind on a particular object by increasing the power of mindfulness and introspection. Habituating your mind on a particular object by increasing the power of introspection and mindfulness. In strict sense, habituating your mind on a virtuous object which makes your mind happier. which is the, say for example, how to destroy the other person. You know, you make it so severe on that with mindfulness and introspection. So that is a form of meditation, but it's a destructive meditation. Whereas in a strict sense, meditation is meant to make you happy, right? So meditation in a strict sense is defined as habituating one's mind on a virtuous object, which makes your mind more virtuous and more happy by increasing the power of introspection and mindfulness.
Kumar, founder Kushigram, and my question is on ethics, spirituality, and science together. The discussion that we had on brain-mind control and who will control the brains or minds, and would it be like the richer people or the stronger people controlling the brains, and would it lead to disaster, destruction, and eventually destruction of the entire Earth or our entire system? So, is it like, can we use meditation or like yoga? World International Yoga Day is now there from this year. So better diet in terms of, or that thinking inculcated during early schooling, that education, that values, when you think of others, when you think of betterment of others and good things together in the system through science. Of course, science is there. So when we teach science, we teach of specific details of all these things. So how do we connect all this?
I'll just answer part of this thing when you talk of ethical questions or something like that. It's not a very serious problem. If we can actually find out that this 100 neurons or 1,000 neurons code for an information which is your love for your mother or my love for my mother, for example. And if you stimulate that, you start loving. If you destroy that, you stop loving. And experiments like that are being done. Actually creates a very serious neurological problem at two levels. One, to be even with, that's what society should decide. Right? We are curious, we will keep on studying. But a society as a whole can somehow put a little, maybe it can, but it will have some negative consequences in terms of progress towards curing mental disease and things like that. The second question is, how do we use that knowledge? Now, there's never going to be an answer to that in the way the society exists today. There's always a difference in the power. There's always a difference in the influence of one human being over the other. And obviously, eventually, powerful will end up losing it to their benefit. That's something that society has to decide. But that's how I see it. And it's scary thought, actually.
I think I understood the way you said yoga and what it does and can be used for childhood. Is that what you said? You see, if you take the Ashtanga yoga, there are 8 steps of yoga, which includes what is called dinacharya, the day, the time you get up, the way, what you do, what you eat, how do you do, meditation, dhyana, and all that. If all that is inculcated, obviously you will develop a human being, which is mentioned, a stable person who is not moved too much, not too much anger, not too much of sorrow, that kind of a thing. And you're right, in Karnataka, I mean, I was in the MANS for 25 years. In Karnataka, in all the schools, they introduce yoga at a particular age. So I think that's why I think the Prime Minister talked about yoga day, yoga should be taught. But it's not just physical, the way it is popularized in the West. It's all doing what? Power yoga and some yoga. I think this is all more merchandise rather than anything else. The true spirit of yoga has to be Patanjali's Ashtanga yoga. 8 steps of yoga. Which I've learned. Very quick, Rishi. Very quick.
I have a question for you, sir. Out of curiosity, I'm asking this question. Recently, I saw a movie called Lucy. In that movie, the character somehow she started using her brain to 40%, 60%, 80%, and finally to 100%. And in all these processes, what happened that she used to realize or feel everything, what was happening around. Like she used to feel the transpiration of the plants. Like if
to make it very quick, again, it goes back to the same point, like what the Secretary of Traffic said earlier. You use your brain 100%. Say, because of this, you know every atom of the universe, how atoms there are vibrating, every movement of your mind, what is going to happen in the future, your death, tomorrow, all these things. And you're scared, right? Then, oh, tomorrow is my mother's death. If tomorrow is my father's death, then you are in the world chaos. And, but this is a clear indication of lack of wisdom, right? Without wisdom, the knowledge can be very destructive to yourself. With wisdom, the knowledge can be extremely helpful. Because you know that, say your father is dying tomorrow, because of this knowledge, 100% is your brain. And if you have a wisdom, you will, there are 24 hours left with your mother. You will be exceptionally kind to her. And you can even console her how to tackle her death in a very skillful way. Whereas if you don't have this wisdom, then you will become paranoid, and then you will end up yourself in the hospital, right? And the other point about the diet, not the mind, not the brain, but the diet, right? So this also we have to think very seriously, right? The richest person, they might have in the 5-star hotels, they might have the best of the diets, but they can do the worst of the unhappy person. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So these, the richest people, they have dietitians. What actually your body needs, they are so concerned about that, and they are so unhappy. They have to depend on sleeping pills, pills. There's the best of the diet. And the dietitians, best of the dietitians there, right? So this does not make you a good person, a happy person. So there's something more. Thank you.
The Ayurvedic principle says there's 3 types of diets: the tamasic, the rajasic, and sattvic. Okay, it depends upon what you eat. Your personality is dependent on that. So Ayurveda strongly recommends one type of diet. Tamasic are very angry, emotional. Rajasic are supposed to be intellectual. Sattvic are more religious philosophers like him. So these are the 3 levels which at least Ayurveda discusses.
Just one second, just to make a quick point, I don't think there is scientific evidence that we use 20% of our brain. Brain is highly energy consuming organ. It consumes 20% of total calories that our body uses. Evolution would not let us survive with the entire brain if we were using only 20% of the brain. We would have had only 20% of the brain. So this is a myth actually. Scientifically it's a myth.
You have left one of the aspects of mind. Question is very simple. Do you think that if there is only one mind, it will develop? Or mind can only develop with interactions with other minds? So development of mind is a social process, is a combined process, or can we talk about one mind and all the properties of one mind only? My second question is that what is about the content of mind? How it gets related to the world?
For the first question, I agree. I think even biologically, humans are social animals. So our minds develop by interacting, our language develops by interacting with people who speak other language. So the answer is obviously, from my perspective, yes. The second question, as far as the content of the mind, I mean, that is in terms of, that is what normally we call perception, right? That when we interact with the world, we perceive what is out there, we get knowledge about the world. So, and that content will differ depending on various factors. Different organisms gather different kinds of knowledge about the world. The bats presumably have the kind of knowledge that definitely we do not have because their perceptual systems are completely different. So, but the content would depend on the kinds of perceptual and motor systems.
Can you just go back to the first point which you said, Dr. Srinivasan?
Yeah.
The first point which you said.
Yes.
I think, when in terms of you studied earlier, like, we are talking about the neural, you can make some changes in the neural, one of the neurons. So there we are talking about the individual, right?
Sure.
The individual brain.
Yeah, but the neurons change depending upon the world that it is seeing or experiencing. And the world consists of other human beings.
No, the question is, like, like the brain enhancement kind of techniques which you use, and you are deliberately, let's say, making some neuron more, some faculty be improved, and some other faculty may become casualty. So can you think about it in a collective fashion, like go beyond the individual neural network and look at it collectively? Maybe we should have a social scientist to answer, but probably you can throw some light on it. I think you were touching upon that point somewhere.
Well, I don't know if I can answer this question at all. I'm really not sure because most of the drugs or intervention techniques are very specific to specific mental processes, cognitive processes, or specific neural mechanisms. So of course there are these things like meditation which are presumably holistic and affect a lot. So we think that could be the kind of thing that you might be looking for. But we don't have a final answer because that depends on again what kind of goals you have as well.
Hello. Yeah, just one last comment with an implicit question. Hi. So I'd like to move back to the topic of the discussion, race between mind and machine. I would like to thank Damdulji for giving spiritual perspectives which are almost in the same language of systems theory and history and philosophy of science, and we are essentially boiled down to a race between hypotheses rather than a race between mind and machine. And ideas like a system is a sum of parts are belonging to the 19th and 20th century. I mean, history and philosophy of science have progressed too much to, make us be a bit more reflexive when we are constructing hypotheses. For example, a theory of waste emerged after thermodynamics and modern economics. So, can we be a bit more reflexive in framing our hypothesis of what this race between mind and machine is? And be sensitive to different levels of uncertainty, because uncertainties are not just epistemic, they can be ontological, they can be cosmological, you may never know. So a big amount of reflexivity won't hurt. And this is perhaps a part of the larger debates on artificial intelligence, that there is a race of...
Make it short, please. Yeah, sure. We're running out of time. What I will request are three people wanting to ask questions. Please just ask the question, answer. We will.
I have a question, please. Here.
The last one.
Yes, something very simple. You talk about neuroplasticity of the brain as well as molding the brain. So this is for you, Dr. Gauri. There is a therapy called neurofeedback therapy, which is happening in Bangalore. I want to know the effects of this therapy versus medication. And also something which Dr. Ranjan touched upon the last time I met him was binaural beats. So I want to know the effects of this versus medication. How is it affecting the brain? Does it really last, or like medication, it lasts as long as the medication is taken, or for a shorter period of time, or do we need to go back to the therapy time and again for it to be more sustainable?
Let three other people wanting to ask questions. Please ask questions. We will discuss.
You told that there is a physical brain and there is mind, and when it is subtler, that it can go away from it. Whereas Neeraj told that at some point of time, maybe mind and brain can come at one point, which should not be the case, I would say like that, because it is not the nodes where music comes from, it is the space in between the two nodes where the interplay will give you different tunes at different point of time. So that is one question to you is whether where is intellect now? Because we have used the word brain, we have used the word mind, but TriFact is using with working with intellectual property rights. And there Ranjan some nodes like applications where it is told that some of the thing which comes from brain to intellect are the way. So there can be some patriotic effect in between, and that is where the intellect will break. So I am very much convinced with the you can say sub-rays who are very much business minded. I would like to know from you why some people are more business minded and why others are more brainy. That is philosophers.
Let the questions come first.
On integration, one word is missing. We are not talking about art. The metaphorical. We say, I feel it my brain, my mind, my brain, my heart. My heart goes out to that person. Which is that part of the way does that fit in to the whole thing? Consciousness, that perception, or intellect. Where does the heart come out? Doesn't have to go to play. That's my motive.
Okay, I will answer.
Not the biological heart.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Purushottam. I am working as Chairman and Managing Director of NRDC, the National Research Development Corporation. We are in the era of intellectual property rights. And India has, I think, taken a lead in digitizing the traditional knowledge. In a similar way, whether India can take a lead in digitizing the traditional wisdom so that it helps the next generations, the future generations, the knowledge of our machines and our saints, which they have created on this earth, probably can be protected and India can take a lead in that. This is what I think Dr. Prabhakar Ranjan himself is an expert in this area. I request probably tifacnew Association, many other scientists who are working in this area, probably can take a lead and the guidance and help of our Secretary DSC, who is also philosophically inclined. Probably I think we can get a boost and take this initiative so that future generations just benefit out of our efforts.
Thank you. Actually, we'll run out of time. We'll actually try to stop the system and go over to a lot of people give you. But in technology like 2020 also we are talking about this aspect, so we'll cover that. Let me stop because there's so many things, but what I promised you, we'll come back. We'll come back with a longer session when we have more time to explore, because again, the thing is, we're just eating a morning and we can go on for hours. But we call it the glimpse only. We'll follow it up and we'll have a bigger time. So thank you very much.
Let me start with all the dignitaries. And here I just want to share one scripture from Upanishad. It says, Atmaiv Atmano Bandhu, Atmaiv Virupuratmana. Our own mind is our best friend and our own mind is our worst enemy. So before we conclude this session, I would like to request our ACD Director, Dr. Prabhakar Ranjan, to please felicitate our dignitaries with memento.
This memento actually is the brain. Of course, we could have done individual brains also if we had MRI scan.
Hello.
Using 3D printing, so actually it can be made individual. It's using 3D printing, which we have been trying to promote. This is customized to individual needs. You can make the customized individual brains also, but right now it's a common brain that we have used. And what we are seeing is that actually you can make molds very cheaply, like this. Whatever cost was there for making one, you can make a mold and then copy it. But you want to individualize, so each one of them has a different name written on it. So please make it. Tell me which one is which.
Ladies and gentlemen.
So I hope it's a feminine brain, and I don't know where the mind is.
Thank you, all the dignitaries. And now I would like to invite on stage our registrar, Mr. Rishipal Singh, for signing off the ceremony with vote of thanks. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, all of you. Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Anil Kapoor Sahab, Secretary, DST, Professor Asutosh Sharma Sahab, respected dignitaries, media persons, and my colleagues. It is a privilege and pleasure for me to render vote of thanks to all the speakers and guests for gracing this occasion of 28th Foundation Day. It was indeed a pleasure to witness a thought-provoking panel discussion on future planning. My heartfelt thanks to all the panelists, Dr. Bolidevi, Professor Neeraj Jain, Professor Narayan Srinivasan, Gese Torchi Damadal, and our Executive Director, Professor Prabhakar himself. I express my sincere thanks to our Honorable Chairman, Dr. Anita Kotkar, for tifacnew lecture. Special thanks to the children from National Association for Blind New Delhi, who rendered beautiful Vandana, and also would like to express my thanks to Professor Gadre, under whose guidance we could witness the electronic lamp lighting ceremony. The successful culmination of this program is the result of guidance of our Executive Director. And I would like to conclude my vote of thanks by conveying my heartfelt thanks to the team who worked day and night to make this event so wonderful. Thanks to all once again, and now humbly inviting for you